All right. Hey, Nurses on Fire. I have the honor of having Miss Aiyana join us from the Vagina Chronicles. Hey, Aiyana.
Hi.
I love Aiyana because she represents for us women out here who sometimes don't know how to speak up for ourselves or don't know that we have to. So I appreciate your platform so much. Let's get started in talking about how you got into nursing in the first place.
Whew, okay, you got time? How did I get into nursing? So, a roundabout story. So, I actually was not planning to be a nurse. It wasn't even on my radar. I just knew that growing up, I wanted to be in a profession where I could help people and really just make an impact with them and connect with them. And so, trying to figure out what would lead me to that path. And then I saw this birthing video when I was a young kid growing up, and it was like where everyone else is like scared and petrified. I was just like, this seems very normal. I had my eyes set on that. Like I wanted to actually be an OBGYN. So my roots start with being pre-med, taking the MCAT, applying to medical school. Yeah, I went the distance, girl. Sure did. I sure did. And in the midst of all that, as I was completing a post-baccalaureate program, which is like after your baccalaureate program, I did that in biomedical sciences, and that kind of mimics your first year of medical school where I was. And I realized this is not what I expected it to be and anticipated to be. In my mind, I wanted to spend quality time with patients, watching them grow and get better and be healed and, find ways to improve their health, etc. But it just was not the route for me. And so honestly, I was sitting down one day at the computer, like looking into what other professions I could do that would be helpful. And it was like, those scenes where like the light comes down and you hear, ah, that was literally my experience. I hit the nursing tab and I was like, whoa. And to back up, like my grandmother was a nurse. Later on, after she passed away, I found out she was actually a nurse midwife in the islands. Several family members, her sister was a nurse. Another sister was a nurse. I had some like cousins. So it's in the blood. I just was not hearing that for a while. When it hit like full force and then all the doors flung open. It was confirmation that this was my path. This is where I'm supposed to be. You're in the direction you're supposed to be going. So that's how I chose, or nursing chose me. And I say the same thing about midwifery. My heart never changed in terms of like wanting to be in obstetrics or in that birth work care. The modality or the avenue towards it just changed, which was midwifery, and it matched more so in line with what I envisioned it looking like. That's kind of where the nursing part came in. And I'll say this too, I will always, you're advanced practice provider, whatever, you're still a nurse. I will never ever, like, nursing is me. I am nursing, and that is at the root of like my career and how I was trained. And I'm forever indebted and I'm grateful to the profession because it taught me so much and I've learned so much and opened so many doors and pathways.
You know what? I always say that, like, once a nurse, always a nurse. Like, we are nurses, like, at the heart. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm Nasima, but yeah, I'm a nurse. Those two things go hand in hand. And a lot of times people are like, you are not your job, but it's more than a job, it's more than a role. It is truly an identity. And so, yeah, I feel you 100%. So no matter what I do, even if I never work a day at the bedside, I'm still going to be a nurse because it's the way that we think, it's the way that we interact. It's our identity. So, yeah, I love that. And I also love that you talked about like being pre-med at first. I did not go as far as you. I was the same way. And I thought, yeah, I would be a doctor. And people would be like, why don't you do nursing? I was like, why would you tell me that? Are you insulting me? I don't understand. But then I was like, man, I'm hecka stupid. Like I should have did it when I was 18. I am so silly. And it's like, yeah, my aunt is a nurse. The one who raised me, picked me up from school every day. She's a nurse. Like, why didn't I see this? Like, so I can totally relate to everything that you were saying. But like you said, nursing chose you, girl. You got to get chose for real. For real.
It's the truth. As much as I wish I had, quote unquote, there's no regrets about the time, but
Hmm.
as much as I would have loved to have started it earlier, the pathway and the people that I've met, like I met one of my best friends in nursing school. Like I can't change, I wouldn't change this. This is the path that was for me. And it might take longer than somebody else. And that's one of the points that I try to like, hone in, in different settings. I'm like, the path that you're on is specifically for you. What it looks like for me is going to look totally different for you, and that's okay. That's completely fine. It's all about how it's going to shape you as a person and what's going to challenge you to do later on as well. So just let it happen. Be open.
Yep. So now you're a nurse midwife, working in Southern California. But not only that, you have this incredible platform, the Vagina Chronicles. Can you tell us how that got started?
Ooh. I'm gonna stop saying this, but I'm gonna say this. This is gonna be the last time I say it. Chronicles, the Vagina Chronicles happened by accident. And honestly, it's not by accident because again, these things are all, they work towards our good, and I'm a firm believer in that. But it was really a result of me feeling like I had lost my voice, and so I tell this story. I went to go see Death by Delivery. It's a documentary surrounding Black maternal health and the crisis that we face in America. And yeah, it's on PBS. Like it's for free. People can go watch it. I went and saw this screening at the California African American Museum in downtown LA. And I went with a sister friend who's now actually a doula, and she'd been doing before she got the title, but now she's trained. So we went together. We're like, yeah, let's go see this. And at the end, they were asking questions and talking about like avenues for midwifery, how do we get more access for patients, and listening to Black women, because that's, and I shared, some of my story. Like I sit in front of these patients and people aren't listening to them. They'll tell somebody and then they're not heard. They go tell somebody else, and then it becomes, well, why is this person being so loud? Well, no one's listening to them. So, what else, what other avenue, what other way do you have to verbalize these things? So we went to see the screening, and like something like there was this fire in me at the end of the night. And my friend who I went with had been telling me for a while, she's like, you need to like do a blog or something about your midwifery journey, blah, blah, blah. And I had been hashtagging things in my personal pages as the Vagina Chronicles anyways, because like, this is like my day to day, right? As a midwife, it is like vaginas, they're everywhere.
It's our life. It's my life too. Vaginas every day, hey.
All over the place. I mean, vaginas run the world. Like if you think about it, that's just how we are. But all that to say, I created the page because also I was not seeing a lot of Black midwives on social media. And that was like, concerning. Like these people, patients and clients are looking for folks who will look like them. And I'll speak to more about that later, but look like them, they can relate to and understand their health concerns and their needs, and also what it means to be Black in America, bottom line. And so that's where that started, and it kind of just propelled from there. And so that's how essentially the Vagina Chronicles got started. It was a way to use my voice, but also and remind people of like who they are, the power that they have, and then also provide this level of education, because there are some folks out there, I was seeing a lot of that too. You sit in front of folks and they don't know what's going on with their parts. They don't know what it looks like, the definitions, the terms. And these are basic principles that can keep you healthy. They can either lead to a pregnancy, they can, lead to infection if we're not careful, so all of that, wanting to give a voice to folks that may not have one, or support them in whatever decision they're trying to make, empower people and educate. Like those are the kind of the foundations of where all that came from.
Dang, I love it so much, so much stuff. Well, but you're giving me chills. When you were talking about just, especially like Black morbidity and mortality, and that's a major issue that we're still facing as a country, something that I have had to deal with intimately, unfortunately, just in my patient care experiences. And it's so sad because it transcends all socioeconomic classes, but it affects Black women like nothing else. Like, and it just like Serena Williams is the one that comes to mind, like just right off the top of my head. Like, she had every resource available to her. She even had the white husband, but it didn't help her.
That's the bottom line. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, and they've gone into the statistics on this. It doesn't matter if you've got the highest level of education, your PhD, your master's level, whatever. Doesn't matter if you're making bank, like it does not matter. Like, and as much as like you hear Williams over and over, you have to really think about that situation. And like you said it very clearly, like she's married to a white man. um, she has money. She knows her health condition. This is not somebody who's like new to this. It's not like, oh, I'm just listening to whatever someone else tells me. She's like, no, I've had a history of blood clots before. I know what these symptoms are, and I've been schooled on this because this has happened before. Like, so she's very aware, and still, like, yet and still at the desk making noise. She's not getting listened to, and there's a fundamental problem. Something's wrong systemically if this is happening, right? So yes, for sure, Black women not heard, and oftentimes not treated well. I mean, Black people as a whole,
As
so.
a whole, I had to ride on a doctor the other day because they wanted to diagnose my boyfriend with a cough when he came in there halfway dying. And I said, see, I'm going to need you to do a little bit of basic differential diagnosis and know that he didn't come in here with a cough. And I wouldn't send him here with a cough because unlike you, I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm looking at. And I know when something is beyond my scope. So I'm going to need you to take this a little bit more seriously. So it's always that having to check somebody. But the thing is that oftentimes we're too scared to advocate and we're too scared to speak up in our professions because it's our livelihood. And a lot of people without that check aren't able to provide for their family. And so oftentimes we can't be fully a patient advocate like our role is because we are we have economic, we have, we don't have our money together. Basically, we ain't got our shit together, and that gets in the way of the care we're able to provide. Um, and I've seen it over and over again. Like I said, I've experienced it firsthand. I often talk about a toxic environment in where I was seeing Black women over and over again not being listened to. And I'm going to give this one example, and I never really share this story because I usually try to keep it really general. But because we're speaking a little bit more specific in this podcast, so I had this patient. She had just moved to California from Atlanta, her third baby. She wanted to be back. And I admitted her, and she, well, TOLAC. So she wanted to do a trial of labor after a C-section. And she, very knowledgeable, very educated. And she knew what she wanted to do. So I admitted her. I went home. I came back from at like 12 hours later, and with her third baby she was still in labor and I was her nurse. And over the whole 8-hour shift, she like there was obviously something wrong, and I was telling the doctors and she was telling the doctor. I was like, hey, there's something wrong. I've got her all prepped to go to the back. Whenever you're ready, let's go. She was like, oh, I'm having all this pain. She had an epidural. I'm having all this pain. Something's not right. Like, I just, want to do a C-section. The doctor tells her, You know what? Now that you're having pain, you want to have a C-section. This is labor, okay? This is what you signed up for. So we're gonna proceed. But if you really want to have a C-section, we'll do it at the change of shift, okay? When everybody else comes in. So we'll do it then. And I was like, no, but like we really need to go right now. She's like, we're going at change of shift. What control do I can't roll her back into the OR and do the procedure myself. I spoke up. I told her, I said, hey, let's do it now. I ended up staying over for change of shift and to do the C-section. And they were, I'm telling you, like playing around, like from door time to incision time was way too long. By the time we cut her open, the baby is hanging out of her uterus because, of course, she abrupted, you know? And it's just an example of people just not listening to the patients, but also not listening to the nurses. And that was like my breaking point where, you know what, I don't have to deal with this anymore. But I'm also in the position that I'm not afraid that by speaking up, I'll lose my job. And so that's what I had to do in that situation and continue to do. But a lot of people aren't there. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring you on is to just highlight the fact that there is so much that happens in our career and so many things that we see. But all this is like one of my major whys as to why I want to be financially independent, because I want to be able to speak up. I want to be able to walk away from a work situation if it's not serving me and serving my patients, but be able to be the advocate that I know I can be without having the implication or having the fear of losing my job and my financial stability are hurting my family in doing so. And I know that there are so many people that are in that position. And so I just wanted you to highlight the fact that, yo, you're not tripping.
No, you're not. And unfortunately, the stories that you're telling, or the story that you told right now, that's one of many. That's one of
Hmm.
several that happen, many that happen from the day to day, And so, but there's this ingrained um, fear that has been placed in us, and just it's been placed in us from the time we got here. And when I say that, like from slavery. And so we fear what is going to happen to us if we speak up. And we see this in so many different ways on a daily basis, not just in healthcare, but in all. There's so many little microaggressions that happen on day-to-day basis as well. But we see this, and we've been conditioned, and this is everyone. This is not just Black people, though. We've been conditioned to believe that whatever a doctor says, a provider says, is gold. It's the truth. There's nothing, whatever they say goes. And I think what the beautiful part about midwifery and nursing is we're here to like kind of smash that. Like nurses, and I love what you said about nurses too. Nurses, we spend time with patients. And that was one of the things that really pushed me into nursing after doing that program, seeing like this is not what I thought it was going to be. Like, I want to spend time with my patients. And what happens is if you go along the course of like a nurse, when you have a teaching facility or even non-teaching, you have these residents come in and they're like, oh, so how did the patient do today? And what's going on? They're gathering these little bits and pieces of information from you because you've been with the patient all day long for your full 12, 16, whatever, 8, 10 hours, And so I I know as a provider, as a midwife, I again practice in a large teaching facility. I can't do my job without the nurses that I work with. Now, is everybody working for the same goal? That's a question you're gonna have to ask when you go into the hospital space. But when you're working with people who have the best interest in the safety of a patient, and in my case, a patient and their baby and their family at heart, they're going to tell you what's up, just like you did to this doctor who didn't listen. Like, hey, something's not right here, it doesn't feel good. And whether or not, maybe we have to trust our guts, because number one, because when we lead into that, we're leaning into something that's already intrinsic in us, saying some don't feel right. And that's, those things are in place for a reason, right? Um, but if we're not listening to those things and not giving them opportunity and space for us to say, critically think, what's happening, what's going on, let me assess, let me take a look, let me go put eyes on this patient, we're losing touch with the humanity part and the personality part and the safety part. So I mean, you hit it on the money here. On the money, literally. And finances play into this too, but going back to that fear part, we believe what the provider said is gold, and we don't question it, and we don't walk into these spaces without someone with us. And I'm not saying you have to be with somebody who knows textbook medicine, to the T. You just need someone there to support, because sometimes in situations you hear one thing, especially when you get nervous, anxious, or you hear one bad little thing, then your mind starts spiraling, and you need that person to hear and listen, but also sometimes to speak and ask questions, things that you might not have thought about before. I would say on a personal side, in the last 6 months, I've had at least 3 or 4 people that I know personally who have been into the hospital space, Black people. And one of them was a very close friend. Well, several of them were very close, but some she didn't feel like something was right. This is somebody who's also in the nursing profession. Something wasn't right, and she went in. They treated her, oh, this is what it is. Da da da. Went home. She's like, I still am not. Something's not sitting well. My body's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. She's knowledgeable. She's also an advanced practice provider. She knows something's not, and I was like, well, did they do any like labs? Did they do any imaging? She's like, no. I was like, okay, you're going back in? Okay, cool. I'll meet you there. Right. And so, sometimes you have to, I always say on my page, flip a table, be heard. And it's not the point of getting violent, it's the point of speaking up, so that, or causing a scene, so that people understand where you're coming from. You're not listening to me, and guess what, I'm not dying on your watch. So do whatever you got to do. And in that point, we ended up calling um a family member who actually was like, they did what? They didn't do this, they didn't do that. He was like, you know what? Don't worry about it. Leave. I'm gonna do this, this, and this for you. And this is, eventually she got the correct treatment. But these are, again, people going in, hearing what someone has to tell them about themselves. You know your body, and it's up to us to start paying attention to that as well. To speak to the finance part of things, we really it's difficult for us because, again, with this ingrained fear, and also how the institution works as a whole, we're not set up for success, and we don't set ourselves up for success because that's all we know. And until we break that, in our financial independence, and gaining wealth in various ways, we are left in this place where we can't do more for ourselves, our families, our bodies, etc. So, the simple act of like hiring a doula to go in with you, someone who is knowledgeable about birth and the birthing process and pregnancy, postpartum, breastfeeding, all of these things. This is a valuable resource. So, a doula is like a coach, but also this person who can come and do all these things. But if you can't afford one, or you don't know about it, you're limiting yourself when you go into the hospital space. And there are some things changing. The state of California, I know, and I know Massachusetts only because I born and raised there, so I kind of keep up with a few of the things there. But they are at this point in time, getting funding for doulas to people who can't afford them. The other thing too is doing your research, because there are doulas who will work on a sliding scale. You go to the South, doulas will work with a bartering system, like, well, you can't pay me. I mean, let's not take it crazy, because they still have a livelihood to maintain. But, oh, maybe you can't pay this bill, but you can watch my kids, or you can, help me when I have to go do a certain service for somebody, you know? So there are ways in which it can get done, but if we're limited in our knowledge and we're oppressed to this system and to this space that has been created for us and we've been kept in, then how do we evolve over time? How do we change and break the things that are keeping us back, you know? If that
Yes.
makes sense.
Like you brilliantly demonstrated, it's on both sides. Okay, it's on our finances, and the power that we can have over the care that we receive or the care that we deliver. It's on both sides, because we're going to be a patient in this situation. I became a patient too and wasn't heard and wasn't listened to, and you know, if I wasn't in a strong financial position, that could have affected me. And so, yeah, and I love the doula example. There are volunteer doulas out there too. Just there are hospitals that do provide volunteer doulas, but I think that overall, I'm scared for Black people in general to experience anything, outpatient medicine, inpatient medicine, labor and delivery, without an advocate, and without having and and you know, my boyfriend jokingly said, but he was like, insurance companies or hospitals need to pay for somebody to be in here to advocate for you, because if you hadn't been in here, she straight up just lied. The doctor straight up like lied, said she offered him an x-ray and didn't, but he was like, but she just straight up lied and wasn't gonna say nothing until you called her out. So like that should be mandatory, you know? And so yes, I think it should be mandatory, but in the meantime, the best investment that we can make is in our education, is in empowering ourselves. But just like you have, like in sharing your story and sharing your experiences, and just getting things out there so people know, first of all, people know I'm not tripping, this really did happen to me, because there's so much power in understanding that, like, you know, people can be like, oh, that's fear mongering, telling people how many Black women die in labor and delivery, and you're just getting people mad, you know. No, it's about knowing what you're getting into so you can prepare for that. And it's also about knowing what tools, or just knowing that you're not tripping. There's a lot to be said in feeling heard and being seen, and then being able to take action in that. Because sometimes when we don't know what we don't know, we're in a dangerous situation. We're putting ourselves in a dangerous situation. And that's why I love your platform. I love what you're doing. I love how you're inspiring people to just learn just the basics about themselves, but also how to speak up, and giving people the words to be able to use in certain situations, and just to make people aware of what's going on. We were talking offline about the Lewis show, and about how people were coming after now it's hard for me to say, this is my cousin. So I'm gonna say Leslie, who's the mom of the family having her fifth child, they were coming after her uterus, you know, just because she decided to have a big family. Now you see Mormons around here with hella kids and don't nobody come after them. But the first time, like, you see a Black woman with more than a couple of kids, you have all kind of questions.
Yeah. Like, come out of my pockets. And you know, sometimes, you know, sometimes it comes as a joke. Like, oh, we're gonna have any more. We need to stop doing this. Okay. I speak to myself included, because I'll, you know, from time to time I have to catch myself. Ooh, like that's not my business. But like, come out of people's pockets. You don't know their financial situation. You don't know their level of preparedness. You don't know like what their plans were. Are you in the bed with them at nighttime when they have their pillow talk? No. So like, come out of their business. It's not your place for any of that. And then there's that privilege, the white privilege that, you know, they feel that they're allowed to say these things. No, not at all. This has nothing to do with you. How many kids someone has or doesn't have You know, you never know, oh, why don't you have any children? I encourage people, if they have the boldness and if they've experienced loss, speak up and say it, because we need to shut down this culture of asking people about things that don't concern them. So, oh, I've had two miscarriages and that's why I don't, or I lost my uterus trying to have a baby. Like, that's why. Do you have any other questions? Or, yes, I'm having another child. Are you planning to donate to the diaper fund? Are you going to be donating to their college tuition? Like, the level of in someone else's business needs to stop. Like, it just needs to stop. And so you don't know someone's situation. It's just not, it's not your place to have any of that. I do want to go back to something you did say though about the fear, no, about knowing what you're walking into when you get into the hospital. And for a while, I was posting like these rates and this is what's happening in the hospital system, because it has to get out there. Some people still don't know. But I think someone had messaged me and said, is, or maybe I saw it on a post somewhere saying like, it's getting tiresome and anxiety provoking to hear this over and over, which is true. Like, I want, as much as I want you to be informed about the statistics and what's happening and the danger levels and what happens when you go into the hospital, and you don't have the support that you need. I also want you to know that we are successful in birth. We can have these beautiful Black births with healthy family, healthy babies, healthy breastfeeding. We do it because a lot of the world thinks that, oh, we don't. We can do all of these things when we go in there. So it's not only my priority, my obligation, my prideful obligation, because I want to do this, but it's not only my goal to do that, but it and let you know about what's happening and the dangers around it. It's also my I take pride in letting you know Black birth is beautiful. Black successful birth can happen. And when advocacy happens, like even when there is something, these near misses, or when it's caught, that is an amazing thing too. And I have stories surrounding that as a nurse as well, covering someone for a lunch break once. This for this one Black patient, she's like, I've been in pain all day. My abdomen hurt, had a C-section. She's on like day 2, like shouldn't be feeling this way, wasn't moving, and her family was in there talking about, yeah, she just been in the bed. They just keep giving me Norco. Like, I'm like, it keeps going on and on. Yeah. So and then Norco, that's something that's gonna mask your pain, but also keep you constipated. Like, the gut has a lot of work to do after a C-section. But like her abdomen, so I'm pulling out this tape measure, like we're gonna measure this and da da da. And here's the power of what you can do as an advocate. And I'm using my example because it's me. This is what I know, right? And I've seen it happen with other nurses as well. When you establish a rapport with a doctor and they know who you are, they know you're about business, they know you're not here to play any games. When come at us when when shit goes down and you call them, because again too, what people may not know is sometimes postpartum there's a stigma of it being like, oh, they're fine, whatever. It's like a joke. They're just calling me for the Colace, they're calling me for the ibuprofen. We have to take these things seriously. Critical events can happen in the postpartum time frame. So, blood clots can happen, hemorrhaging can happen, postpartum preeclampsia can happen too. So we need to be mindful. Just because they had the baby doesn't mean we're out of this clear zone. You're now in this somewhat of a fragile state because of all the things that have happened. I can get into the physiology of it too. But all that to say, I'm pulling out this tape measure on this girl. I was like, oh no, we're gonna try to get you up. I couldn't even get her up out of the bed. Could not even get her up because of the pain she was in. So I'm calling this doctor and I'm like, you guys need to come look at it. And this is, they know me, so we get a chance to sit down and talk to these docs. And when you have this rapport with people as a Black person, because again, you're not listened to even though you work in the system, but when you have the rapport between people and they understand and know who you are, your voice is heard again. So I say, please come and look. They're coming to look. And if you didn't hear me the first time, you're going to hear me the second. You hear me the second? Oh, well, let's go talk to your attending. Let me bring in the big dogs. Come to find out so I'm covering somebody for this shift. The next day, I actually go back to see the patient. She was so indebted and grateful for me speaking up for her on her behalf because she's telling this other nurse about stuff and it wasn't being heard. I was like, you need to, the Norco's not going to work for you because something else is going on. And so imaging happened, all this stuff. They were able to make sure whatever happened is a long time ago. So I don't remember details, but whatever they needed to do got done. And the patient, she didn't leave that next day, but the following day. But she was at a place where she shouldn't be in her care. And so recognizing these warning signs, all that stuff, again, it's important to know what can happen. That's real. It's scary. It's anxiety provoking, might make you nervous to deliver in a hospital. I get it. But at the same time, too, please understand there are people out there who can help you. You gotta sniff them out. Like your spidey senses, those vibes, those aren't gonna steer you wrong, you know. And also bring somebody in. I'm not saying bring your whole family in, you know. I'm not saying bring the whole family if you want to, that's one thing. But like I'm not saying bring the whole family in just to be there. I'm saying bring somebody in there specifically designed to make sure that whatever happens to you, they're looking, they're watching, they're asking questions, they're thinking about things that maybe you aren't because you're in the state that you're not completely yourself, you know? You're going through something that needs somebody else's voice and ears, you know? So those are the if you don't take anything else, it's that while these things do go down, there are successful, healthy, happy families, good quality care that does happen in the hospital just as much. Okay? Like that.
I know, because we it can't seem like we're like this is like doomsday. Going to the hospital, have a baby, and you just don't know. But no, what we're trying to make you aware of is just like you know, it does happen, but we you need to be aware, but also be prepared, and that's it.
Prepared. And your pregnancy doesn't start, your family doesn't start, you know, the day you guys have sex or the year that you decide you want to have a baby. It begins way before then. And I think that's what I want people to take away too. Like, you know, again, where do you plan to deliver? Do you plan to deliver in the hospital? Do you plan to deliver at home? Because that's a different expense. And guess what? Insurance isn't covering most of it. You might be lucky and get some coverage, but you're not getting all of that. Are you prepared to pay $8,000 for a home birth? Like, or are you prepared to make a sacrifice so that you can get these funds? Are you prepared to have a doula? You know, like, are you prepared for these things? That's fine. It says, okay, so you're planning to deliver in the hospital. Are you prepared for the disability time when we take you off at 36 weeks? Or are you planning to work until you go into labor, which we can't tell you when that's going to happen? Are you prepared for preterm birth? What happens if you deliver early and your baby has to go to the NICU? You know, God forbid all this. But these are the things that we have to be thinking about in advance. Not only that, and a lot of things surrounds like nutrition and health. That's important too, because what you do in your 20s or whatever in your teenage years will most certainly affect you when you go to have a baby later on in life. Um, are you eating on a level that your cells are going to be rejuvenated? And I'm talking to myself here because I have a lot of changes I need to make. We all do. And so you are not alone, right? You're not alone in this. Like I recognize things about myself that have to change. But like what are you doing to make the change so that when the time comes, if you're planning to have children, even if you're not planning to have children either, let's think about health in general. If you're planning to live a long life, which I don't know anybody who's not, but if you're planning to live a life where you can experience these different things, what are you doing early on to prepare for that? And I want people to be aware of that too. So there's so many different levels to think about. So many.
So many. Yep. And I think that translates into every area of your life, not just your health, but in your finances and in everything. It you got look, Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And that's the
Exactly.
whole
Exactly.
exactly. So with the platform Vagina Chronicles, what has that done for you in your career as a midwife?
Things that I have never even anticipated or expected. Um, so my close circle is like, you got to cash in these receipts. We're talking about, we celebrate the small wins. We've been talking about that lately, and it's like, as much as, because there's this very real thing called imposter syndrome. Where you questioning like, am I really worthy or deserving of all that, or this really happening? Um, but it through the Vagina Chronicles, um, there have been a lot of speaking engagements, podcasts, opportunities to meet with people. The thing that I have probably been the most amazed by and feel the most love about is connecting with other Black midwives, connecting with other midwives on a whole, but other Black midwives. It's just been like, I've met so many different people, and then hearing people's stories. As much as, again, going back to the repeating the statistics of what's happening, like Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth, or more likely to have like comorbidities or those near misses when they're in childbirth. The stories that I'm hearing, when you get people together and talk about their birth stories or their healthcare stories, they're healing as well. So, I hear a lot from folks who are sharing their stories, and nurses too, who talk about, how do I make effective change in my institution? What do I do when I see blatant racism happening within the healthcare system? And so the Vagina Chronicles has given me a gift, and honestly, like I said, accidental, but not really. I All I wanted from it was for my voice to be heard, so that somebody could be helped. And all I wanted out of it was for people to be inspired, and then also to make changes so that they're educated about themselves and their bodies, and feeling empowered. There's so much shame surrounding, women, vaginas, and Black people. There's so much shame. And so, so out of all of this, I've received so much. And so I'm looking for more ways. In this first quarter, I've made some moves, and we're going to head into the second, but looking for more ways to give back, or to, send to those people like a thanks. And so I'll be getting more into that, and just diving into, again, like I said, more speaking engagements. I've had the opportunity to talk to teens, which is like a passion of mine too. Teen pregnancy used to be a really big deal to me, and I mean, it still is, but more so now is the education of like safe sex, consensual sex, knowing your body, and knowing that there's power in what you have, especially as a young Black girl. Young people of color, they need to know like how much power they hold, and that they get to like determine what works for them and what doesn't. So as team, like I said, teen pregnancy is really important to me, and at the core of things. Now education before the pregnancy happens, again, like I said, this preparedness, thinking about finances, all this stuff, period health, all of that, it's become so important for me. So that's what it's done for me.
But most importantly, it's just giving you an opportunity to go beyond the bedside, go beyond your care, and really be able to share your experience and your stories to impact others. And that's what, why this podcast exists largely, is to show nurses what's possible for them, because every one of you guys out there listening is deserving. Every one of you guys have something to share that can impact others, and you never know where that can take you. So I met Aiyana at a retreat in in Mexico. That was the result of just both of us speaking out, and just sharing our stories, and just building these platforms, that didn't start that had very humble beginnings, but has accelerated us and put us in these rooms where we learn this term there, that has forced us to have these accelerated collisions with people that we aspire to. And so that's what being fully in yourself, getting your shit together, whether it be financial, whether it be just investing in yourself, allows you to do. It forces you to have those accelerated collisions with people who you aspire to. And so I really wanted to have Aiyana here because I wanted to show each and every one of you that you have what it takes. You have a voice. You have the power to not only affect the lives of others, but to transform your own life through your experiences and through what you have to share with the world. And so I appreciate you, Aiyana, for what you do. I love and I follow everything.
Thank
and
you.
and thank you for having the courage to speak up and to give women a voice that um so desperately needed, but also to cover things that people didn't even know they needed.
It's opened up a whole new world, and I'm so, just as much as like I hear the thanks, I'm so appreciative of the people who are there listening. Like, you don't have to, you don't, but you're here. And then, not only that, if you listen and take with you and spread, the information that look how much more it can influence change and affect change in our world, so that's a big way. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So where can people connect with you?
People can connect with me on Instagram at the Vagina Chronicles. That's my name. And then I'm on Twitter very rarely, but I believe that's the Vag Chronicles. And I'm not a hater. It's just like time, time. And then I do have a website, the vaginachronicles.org. So please go on there. I try to post at least twice a month, some newsletters. There'll be some more things coming. I let folks know about upcoming events where I'll be speaking. And they can contact me if they want to get in touch for lectures, webinars, etc., whatever's in the works for us. But those are the places where they can reach me.
I love it. Thank you again, Aiyana, for sharing your platform with us, for sharing your story and your experiences. It is so appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.